Viewpoints on the talk station, FM 107, AM 1240. It's Friday afternoon and an opportunity to chat with our normal Friday conversation with right-wing granny, Mary Griswold, joining us this afternoon. And Mary, good afternoon to you. Thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
I know that you were watching the State of the Union address this past week, so my first question, were you impressed?
I was impressed. I think that's I usually watch those things. I even did when Obama was president. And sometimes they're a laundry list.
Right.
This was not a laundry list. This was a plea to come together. And I thought that was important and timely.
No, one thing I do want to question you about, and that was the issue of the challenge, if you will, from the president on the issue of socialism. Did that resonate in your opinion?
I think most Americans have a fairly negative opinion of socialism. I think part of the reason that it's got such popularity or seeming popularity within the millennials and the Democrats is because they don't know enough about it and they don't take the threat seriously.
All right. So what was you have some observations about the State of the Union address. As a matter of fact, something that I was not even aware of. You told me briefly as we began the program off air, something about hand signals?
Well, Powerline blog, which is a very interesting blog. It's done by a couple of lawyers up in Minnesota with occasional guest posts. And I love it because they analyze things very logically. Mm-hmm. And they also have a sense of humor. They get a little out of hand during the Miss Universe contest and during the soccer finals in England, but other than that, they're a really good blog.
Powerlineblog.com, all right?
And they posted, one of their writers, who was it? It was Paul Marengoff, posted an article about the hand signals that were going on during the State of the Union. And Nancy Pelosi was signaling the Democrats. And if you caught it, it was a riot. At one point, they started booing Donald Trump when he's talked about that caravan. Mm-hmm. And if you watched her, she lifted up her hand to say stop.
Oh, okay. All right.
That was one instant. And there was another place, and I don't remember exactly where it was, but she told them to stand up.
Oh, no, I did not see that when she asked them to stand, because, and I want to talk about that in a moment. There was that moment, though, and it's been pretty much gone viral on her hand clap when she's clapping her hands forcefully at the president. I thought that was kind of interesting. I will say the one thing that did catch my attention on this was the fact that the women, of course, many of them, the vast majority of them, wore white, I guess for the purpose of distinguishing them from the rest of the crowd. But when
suffragette, it was to honor the suffragette movement.
Okay.
Evidently, the early suffragettes were white. I don't know that, but that's what I have read.
You're not old enough to remember that, but I do recall that vaguely. Close. But yes, but no. But the other thing that I thought was fascinating about the State of the Union address, and I've got to say that the president was self-effacing in some regards. Remember, after they applauded the fact that most women historically are in the workforce now, as they began to sit down, he raised his hand. He said, "Don't sit down yet. You've got more." And that's when he announced most women ever to be serving in Congress, which got a rave review from those women, and also some shouts and hand waving and things of that nature. I'm wondering, I appreciate the fact that, and by the way, just in case anybody's wondering, our guest, Mary Griswold, yes, is a woman. I'm pretty confident of that. I've talked to her husband.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, he's confirmed it for me. But, Mary, the thing that's really kind of unnerving about this is it was made, they made it a caricature, which was unfortunate. I think what's important is we want to elect people who are best capable of representing their constituents. And
I don't care if you're a frog.
Right.
If you do a good job, we need to vote for you.
Exactly. And I just was, that was a little, I thought, unseemly. I was disappointed by it.
Well, it's identity politics again, which is what we have so much of. And It's so unconstructive. If a woman can do a job as well as a man,
right,
she deserves to get that job and be paid
right
for that job. But she doesn't deserve to get it because she's a woman.
And yet, that was very much the kind of the results of that applause and activity. And it is unfortunate. It was more about them than it was about their constituents or the country. So,
and the other thing that got me, now, this is the South. People have manners here. That's kind of nice.
Right.
I lived in Massachusetts for a long time. That's a whole other discussion. But when someone is speaking, you shouldn't be reading and shuffling pages.
Oh, who was doing that?
The kindest thing I can say about that is that Nancy Pelosi may have been reading a transcript of the script.
Yeah, but they were big.
Maybe she didn't think she could hear well or something.
They were big pages. I mean, they were large pages. But
maybe she needs big print. I mean, the lady's not young.
Okay. But
but I mean, I just think that's rude.
Well, it was interesting, and she kept shuffling pages around. That was pretty obvious as well. That's one thing I'm wondering. Do you think that distracted or detracted from the president's presentation?
I think it just looked. I think the optics were bad.
Okay.
But the other side of that coin is that to have to sit still and look interested while someone talks for an hour is a challenge. I don't care who they are.
Right.
It's a challenge.
Plus the fact you're looking at the back of their head. One other question.
Yeah, that's not exciting either.
One other item. As a matter of fact, this will segue into another topic here in just a moment. But the observations on your comments about the president's address on the issue of abortion. Earlier that day, Mary Griswold with us, rightwinggranny.com, by the way, is her blog location. Earlier in the day, I'd spoken with Laura Trump, that is his daughter-in-law. And I asked her, was he going to address the issue of abortion? And she was not sure. But he did, and I was very pleased he did. Your observations about the reaction to that his comments about abortion and those women in white.
Those women in white sat on their hands during those comments. And that's kind of sad. Because what we have seen, we have gone from a Democratic Party that said, oh, yes, we support abortion in the first 3 months, to a Democratic Party that is essentially supporting infanticide with the comments by the Virginia governor.
Or as some would argue, baby murder or baby dispatching of a living person. That I'm wondering, is this going to be kind of a major political issue topic for the remainder of this year, in your opinion?
I think it's going to be a major topic through the 2020 election, and I think a lot of average Americans, which I happen to be one, are going to be very turned off by this idea.
With that said, and let's talk about this in relationship to Virginia, because that has pretty much consumed the conversation over the past few days, and quite interestingly enough, it's taken the focus away from New York, the state of New York, where Governor Cuomo introduced, or actually signed legislation, which, by the way, got major applause from the New York legislature, standing applause, which is sad. But now we've seen the situation in Virginia with the governor, and we can talk about the other missteps and failures there within their administration. The governor, the lieutenant governor, the attorney general. It's really shameful and it's sad. Your thoughts?
Well, I think first of all, this whole dust up with the attorney general and the governor and the lieutenant governor is meant to distract from what the governor said, because I think the governor intentionally or otherwise let the cat out of the bag in a way that is not popular.
Well,
I don't think generally the voters of Virginia support the idea if a baby survives an abortion that you're going to sit there and let it die.
Well, I've been thinking about that observation, and for those who've not seen it, go to Facebook or YouTube, and possibly Facebook, and look at his interview on WTOP in Washington, D.C., I was intrigued by the concept that if the baby is born alive, and basically it's a botched abortion, that they can, if you will, unbotch it by going ahead and dispatching the living baby after birth. That was really, and the cool presentation, the rather calm and I want to say professional, I don't think that's the right term, description of his presentation, but the cool and almost callous feeling. I'm wondering, to your point, is that possibly something that the National Democrat Party is very concerned about?
Yes, I'm sure they are. And whatever happened to the Hippocratic Oath that said do no harm?
It's a question we're all asking, and in the midst of it all, we're wondering, will this, again, going back to the comment, will this be sort of the iconic disclosure or description of this issue for the political fodder? If the Republicans have a brain, and sometimes we debate that, it will show up in spades in 2020. If they've hired the right people, it will be there. This is Mary Griswold of Right Wing Granny, our guest this afternoon, and we're chatting with her about her blog, rightwinggranny.com. That's, remember that, right wing, W-I-N-G, and then Granny, Granny.com. You know, Mary, before we wrap it up with you, you do touch on this issue in relationship to your observations on your website, rightwinggranny.com, and the fact that we've seen this whole issue of abortion. You have it described in one capacity under morality in America. And that's the question I want to wrap it up with you today. Is morality going to become a buzzword, if you will, and a discussion topic? Can I make one more comment about Virginia that's kind of tangentially related to that? Mm-hmm. There was a time in America where morality was a way of life, not an exception. Right. And we will never know what went on with the lieutenant governor in that situation unless somebody comes forward and says, I lied, and that's not likely. Mm-hmm. But there was a time when women were taught, if he says he's got to go up to his hotel room and get papers, you wait in the lobby for him. Yeah, that's true. That's true. And of course, we're trying. And I'm not trying to blame the victim. That's not what I'm doing. But I'm saying that common sense has to prevail. And women need to realize that not every man is a gentleman. They're not all animals either, but not every man is a gentleman. Good point. Mary Griswold with us this afternoon. All right, and back to my initial question. Will morality be, and that comes under the category of morals, as I might add, by the way. And that, of course, is these concerns associated to assault. Will morality become, in your opinion, a topic of a debate, sadly? It should. I mean, look at going back to the 60s, and I will admit to being part of that generation that I think really messed things up. But anyway, going back to the 60s, the rebellion against traditional morality, we are seeing the fruits of that in spades. And I wonder if there's going to be a backlash. I mean, it took us 50 years, but almost 60, but I wonder if there's going to be a backlash against that rebellion and the realization that we all did better when morality was predominant rather than shoved in the background. Good point. RightWingGranny.com. Our guest this afternoon, Mary Griswold. Mary, thank you very much for being with us. And I do want to mention, folks, go to the website, RightWingGranny.com. Mary, appreciate your time. Thank you. Viewpoints on the talk station, FM 107, AM 1240.